We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. All right, welcome to the show. It's Friday. Thank goodness. Thanks for tuning into the POMcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, and I hope everybody's having a lot of fun. We are jam-packed today. I'll tell you about this real quick. Visit Travel and Cruise World. Give them a call at 1-800-330-7461. That is 1-800-330-7461. What I was trying to do here is everybody needs a vacation. We're 18 months into this thing at this time. So you can give them a call, use them as a resource. They can get you the same prices you can get online, but you have a person. The park actually pays them. So whether you're going to Disney, whether you're going to Universal, the beaches, Gatorland, the whole 9 yards down here in Central Florida, give those guys a call and they will take care of you. That is travelandcruiseworld.com. See Central Florida like a local. Also want to tell you about bookatailgate.com. Take it to the Grove. Tailgating and events. Do a wonderful job of setting up all your tailgating needs. They have single packages and full season packages and can really hook you up. They can store your tailgating stuff in a place. They can rent you what you need. They can even give you an extra tent if more people are coming up than you can expect. They'll even pick up your catering. So give them a check at bookatailgate.com. Again, that's bookatailgate.com, 662-701-1177. Tell them we sent you if you don't mind. Also, if you're interested in watching the podcast, you can catch us on The Stephen Willis or at Old Positively. You can catch us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. Of course, you can see us on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Subscribe and hit the bell. You'll not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about. The notification system on YouTube is fantastic. It is something you really need to sign up for. And what's going on? Sorry about that. Archie is making a bunch of noise, and I need to kick him out of the room, but I'm in the middle of the show at the morning. So he is guarding the house currently. Also, below you can see what all the podcast channels we are on, at least the major ones. We're on minor ones as well. See, it's Positively Ole Miss. You can search it and leave a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want to say. Just leave a 5-star review. So, this weekend, we've gone back and forth. We've had interviews with Kyler Kerbyson. We've had Bill Flowers on here. We've talked about the game and covered it from all angles. All of our analysts from Beast of the East and Best of the West and SEC After Dark, they had their say of what's going on. And after all of that, I do feel pretty good about this game. I genuinely do. Now, Tennessee is really good at making explosive plays on defense. We need to watch out for that. Now, the difference is, though, if Matt Corral sees that coming, Tennessee's going to get eaten up. I don't think Nayland's going to get to them too much because they did Bryant Denny already, so they've already done 100,000. They've already done all of that. But it will be a Super Bowl-type environment for Tennessee. We talked to Kyler Kerbyson last night, and he explained just that, of how big of a game this is for Tennessee. And one second. You got a dog that just wants to be a bad dog from time to time, and he just went and got a plastic bottle, and that would have been terrible for you guys. So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. That this is going to be a Super Bowl. We talked to Kyler Kerbyson last night, and he talked about how big of a game it is for Tennessee. Not just because they think they can get it, because they They probably do at this point. They haven't really played anybody. They've beaten Bowling Green and Tennessee Tech and Missouri and South Carolina, which sounds like a normal November slate for Tennessee, to be perfectly honest. But it's a situation to where they're feeling good. Their confidence is sky high. If they lose the rest of their games, they beat South Alabama and they beat Vanderbilt, they go to a bowl game. They're in Birmingham. And that is a big deal for the University of Tennessee because they are going through a real similar situation that we are going through. See, I've said this over and over and over again. There's no such thing as blue bloods in college football. There's not. It's only coaching. And what happens is after that great coach leaves, they try to, for 10 or 15 years, try to get that back, try to recreate that, regressively search for what's going on. And you end up in a hole and a cycle can develop. And all of a sudden you're in trouble. And 40 years later, Ole Miss, was going through the same thing. And we are trying to build that back up. Tennessee's in the same boat. They spent the first 10 years trying to recreate Philip Fulmer. Now they're finally realizing, okay, we need to do our own thing. And they hired Josh Heupel and they hired Danny White and the Central Florida stuff. And it's all working there. And they remind me a lot of Ole Miss in 2020. But they're not quite there yet. Now, do I think they can get us? Yes, they can beat us. They are good enough to beat us. Do I think they will? Probably not. And the way I think this plays out is we actually are able to stay with them in the first quarter. Their tempo does not surprise our defense. Their defense has trouble with our offense because they have trouble with a good offense. And you saw that against Tennessee or against Pittsburgh. And I think you'll see at the end of the fourth quarter like a 14-14. Now that's big because at the end of the game, they're going to wear down. They don't have the depth necessary to compete at the level they want to compete at. They don't have the depth-wise defensively to match up with that offense, the play volume that they're going to see. And because of that, they need the early first quarter when everybody's fresh. If you jump on them, you really jump on them, it's 28-0, I think, the last 2 weeks at the end of the first quarter. Those teams can't come back. The game's over. You just won the game in the first quarter. Doesn't matter if it's 45-20. You won the game in the first quarter. So much of a key to them are their early starts and how they get going. And I anticipate them to attack the off tackle positions just like Arkansas did. They're going to do that. They do a lot of the same stuff that Arkansas does. They have a similar offense to Ole Miss and Arkansas. Not the same thing, but similar. It would be like if we're a human, it would be like a chimpanzee. It's our closest relative offensively. That's what Tennessee does. And basically it's because the Baylor system, it got ingrained into it, but it varied off whenever the Baylor situation died down. So, but looking at what's going on, that's the way I think this is going to play out. And by the end, this could be a 2-touchdown game, a 3-touchdown game. This is a game that could end up 52-31. That kind of in that ballpark. Now, it can go the other way. Not necessarily them beat us by 3 touchdowns, but it can go the other way too. We need to play clean offensively. This is an explosive play-making defense. Do not need to turn the ball over. Need to be careful for lost yardage. They're going to come in and try and heat up Matt Corral and try and take away our run. They're probably going to blitz quite a bit. What does that mean? That means the hitch game, the jet sweep game, the bubble screen game. Those all come into play. We haven't really done that this year, which means eventually later on in the game, the double moves off of those plays are going to work out. I think this could be a very big game for John Rice Plumlee. I think he's set up to be an underrated star of this game because Tennessee is out their starting middle linebacker. And I think Kyler said they only had 2 or 3 available, and one of those is a walk-on. Now, We all know that can happen to anybody. I think Mark Robinson was also in that same boat. But when RPOs are so important to us and what we do, whenever they blitz, if we get the game going at all, and me personally, I'd like to see Snoop Connor in this game, because if they're going to blitz, if he gets through the line, all of a sudden it becomes 5-on-5 with Snoop out in the front. You win your one-on-ones as a touchdown. So that's what I would like to see. But I think John Rice Plumlee is going to have a nice game doing a lot of that Elijah Moore type stuff behind the linebackers. And those RPOs doing that they're going to put those linebackers in conflict. That's what they want to do. And it'll be interesting to see if they can pull it off. Both sides is going to have a plan. Right now it looks like teams are looking at what Alabama did, and without those 5-star players, trying to recreate it. And I'm curious about that. I'm genuinely curious about that, because it's not a situation where Ole Miss's offensive line is down. People view Ole Miss's offensive line as a problem at the tackle positions and all this going on. You'll hear that from time to time as a problem. It's because they don't understand the substitution patterns of the team and what the actual goal is of the team. The goal is to play really fast, to not substitute offensive linemen in a series. And whoever starts that series, is going to finish it. And because of that, a lot of players don't play. The same thing happens at wideout. There's not a lot of substituting happening. And because of that, they look at it as depth. It's not a depth problem. It's not a depth problem. You got Braylon Brown down there who, if he would have went through recruiting, would have been a 5-star. He might have gotten nicked up in camp and what's going on. There's talent down there. And you will see that next year. Because of this offense, though, and because of what people are ingrained to think about football and how to view football, they see it as problems. But that's not the case. The goal of this offense is to go as fast as possible. But to do that, you need not to substitute. If you have an offensive lineman, this team is in great shape. Absolute great shape. That's one of the benefits of Wilson Love. Everybody talks about the strength coach as being bigger, faster, and stronger and all that. This team is genuinely in better shape than it was. They look different. And it's because of him. Because they're able to get them in good shape and do whatever they're doing, they can play at the tempo they want to play at. Now, we have guys that come in. Let's look at the Indiana game last year. Nobody gave Ole Miss a chance playing a top 11 team in the Outback Bowl without Jerry and Ely, Elijah Moore, Braylon Sanders, and heck, I think somebody else. But Henry Parrish, a true freshman starting and running back without your slot. John Rice Plumlee moving to slot the week of the game. Let's not overreact over who is leaving or who's not available. Let's not overreact to that. Because these guys are good. The replacements are good. They're all scholarship athletes. It's time to realize that. And people are going to start freaking out over whenever Matt Corral goes pro. Let them. Because this offense may look a little different next year. It may not be set up the same way next year. But it's going to be effective. Whether it's Luke Altmaier, Spencer Radler, or a wishbone type quarterback, it's going to be fine. Tim Nicely says, it looks like not subbing much would hurt your ability to get recruiting depth. Well, it helps the ability because football back in the 80s, whenever you looked when Auburn was going and Georgia was going and they were stockpiling what's going on, they needed those depth. They played systems that required you to be 24 deep on both sides of the ball. Or, 2 deep on both sides of the ball. And that became, it's like, once the spread took over and what they were doing, and the rules made this possible as well, because if you sub, they get to sub and they can slow you down. So if tempo is a main portion of what you want to do, they're in position. They're not going to sub much. They're just not going to do that. And in a normal situation when it comes to recruiting, Ole Miss and Mississippi State and teams like that would be at a disadvantage. You can't get the guys, if it's a normal recruiting battle, you can't get the same guys. But if you play differently, if you do things a little bit differently, and you hit the transfer market, you can be hyper successful at Ole Miss. I don't know about Mississippi State, but you can be hyper successful at Ole Miss. Heck, we were 4th and 25 away from playing in the SEC championship game, which we would have won and gone into the playoff. Hotty toddy guy, thank you for tuning in today. And so there's a chance to do that. This game, I do not expect. I would not expect Tennessee to win this game. I don't think Tennessee has the horses. I think we will come out there ready to play. I think we've seen 101,000 the first game. If this was the first game that we've played a road environment like this, yes, I would worry about this team. But the fact that we went to Alabama and learned lessons is going to be a little bit easier, even though it's going to be loud and it's going to be their Super Bowl. Now, everybody is also talking about Lane Kiffin going back as a head coach. I'm not really overly worried about that. I think Kyler Kerbyson mentioned that last night going on. I'm not overly worried about that because Lane has been back there several times as an assistant coach, and it's so long ago. It's kind of stale now. It's not anybody that wants to try to make this like Ole Miss going to Auburn after Tommy Tuberville left. It's not the same thing. So I don't think you have to worry about that cauldron. I think there's some ill feelings with Lane, and there's going to be a small group of people that tries to be vocal. But I wouldn't expect something really over the top about this. Guy says Tennessee is about 3 seasons for competing for the East. Yeah, I believe that. And they got Rodney Garner, by the way. And this is important fact for Tennessee. Rodney Garner will help them get back into Atlanta. When Tennessee is good, they dominate Atlanta. And Rodney Garner has connections all over that city, and it's starting to bear fruit. If Tennessee leaves this guy alone, if he leaves Josh Heupel alone with what's going on, they will create a monster of sort in Rocky Top. Same thing that's happening at Ole Miss will happen there. It is guaranteed. It's almost not even a question at this point. They need a quarterback. They get to see what this offense looks like with a quarterback. You get to see they need to get the Dylan Gabriel, who I think, by the way, no sourcing, no information whatsoever on this. But I think Dylan Gabriel is going to end up in Rocky Top next year. That's my opinion. Because what you're seeing at UCF is it just starting to nosedive a bit. But that's just my thought there. Also, in the Spencer Rattler debate, if he transfers, yes, I would take him at Ole Miss. I would take him at Ole Miss in a heartbeat. Everybody talks about head case and everything's going on. Matt Corral in 2018 started a fight. Started a brawl. 2019, he got benched because he changed plays willy-nilly. It was an immaturity issue. Later on that year, whenever Lane Kiffin got here, Matt Corral decided to change himself, and he did. And he saw the best version of Matt Corral become quarterback. I think something similar could happen in that one. If Kiffin wins, there are some that are not going to take that well. The Rock could be painted up to say most anything, Guy. Guy says some Tennessee fans will have the Kiffin derangement syndrome. And I believe that, that's a possibility with everything that is going on. see. All right. So, what else are we supposed to talk about today? Let's do around the SEC. We're just going to blow through our break and talk about that for a few minutes around the SEC. I am really looking forward to, it's on at the same time, but State and Alabama. I want to see if State can put their linemen and linebackers in conflict, especially in the RPOs. I want to see if Alabama tries to play them straight up. Texas A&M tried to play them straight up and it got them beat. Mike Leach's offense is frustrating. It forces you to not play it the way you think you do. If they play the drop 8 and just do that, they're going to be fine. But they try to play it straight up and try because they were able to dominate against Ole Miss. Mississippi State is going to short cross Alabama to death, and they're going to use RPOs going right behind them. They do a variation of the mesh concept, and it's going to be rough. Theoretically, yes, guy. I'm not saying that the State's going to win the game, but if Alabama tries to play them straight up, they're going to score points, and it's going to be a closer game. If Alabama plays drop 8 and just lets it go and lets Mississippi State throw the ball 50 times for 200 yards, yeah, Alabama's going to win by 40 points. But in Starkville, what's going on? If Alabama tries to play them straight up and a little bit of momentum gets built, and that little hiccup that happens after that Texas A&M game, Nick Saban is desperately trying to play the media right now. With the fact that this team is no longer elite. The air raid, I'm not going to say the air raid doesn't work in the SEC. Phil Longo didn't run the air raid. He ran a version of it. Lincoln Riley, coming in the league, runs the air raid. I think Oklahoma is going to be successful. I think with what Mike Leach does, if you try to play them straight up with a lot of man coverage, which is Alabama's forte, it's what they do really. Every play that Mike Leach has is a man beater. There's so many crossing routes. Wes Welker made it to the NFL because of a shallow crossing route. He did it over and over and over again. I'm not saying Mississippi State's going to win the game. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the people that assume this game is going to be a 50-0 might be a little bit surprised with what's going on, because Texas A&M showed blitz pickups and problems with the Alabama to know what's going on there. And a little bit later on, or earlier in the day, we got like Florida and LSU. That's going to be an absolute beatdown. That game went from like Florida favored by 2 to Florida favored by 11, like that. It was absolutely ridiculous. And since then, Eli Ricks shut it down for the year because of an injury. And I think they're down 9 or 10 starters from the first game. It's all chaos down in Baton Rouge at the moment. And it's perfect timing with them coming to Oxford next week. But Keyshawn Boutte is out for the year. Their offense looks difficult. They have trouble running the football. Max Johnson's a good quarterback, by the way. And Deion Smith coming back to Mississippi, that kind of concerns me with a little bit of heightness that he might have. But it's a game that I wouldn't necessarily worry about. The last 3 opponents that LSU has played against has rushed for over 250 yards. Let that sink in for a second. And now they get Florida. Yeah, so have fun with that. I think LSU has Florida, they have Ole Miss, then Alabama, then Arkansas. Tennessee has a similar schedule to that too. They have Ole Miss, they have at Alabama, they have Kentucky, and they have Georgia. So it's an interesting dynamic in the conference right now because the bottom's about to fall out a little bit, I think, of both of those programs. Now, I am kind of interested to see the Georgia-Kentucky game. Now, Georgia eats up offenses like Kentucky runs. They're absolutely designed to it. Unless Kentucky's front can block and get to block Jordan Davis, I think they call him the oversized commercial refrigerator or something like that, which he's the man. Unless you can get Will Levis blocked up front, you're going to be in trouble. Now, the path for Kentucky to be dangerous in this game is the fact that Will Levis can move a little bit, and Wan'Dale Robinson is really, really good. That is the path forward. But this is a game that I see Georgia winning like 31-7, something like that, and just presses on them. Craig Robinson's going to end up with like 40 yards rushing. And it's going to look like a typical Georgia stat line or early 2010s Alabama stat line of a team they're playing. But I expect Georgia to kind of roll a little bit in this game. Auburn at Arkansas. I am interested about this game. Arkansas, I think, is a 4.5-point favorite. And we talked to Bill Flowers a little bit about this during our show. And after the 7 overtime game, Ole Miss lost that one and the next 2 games. So that game beat us over and over and over again. And it should. It was an emotional thing, and it seemed to go on forever. And our Arkansas has a situation to where, what if they get their turn at that now? They see their turn at that. And with Auburn coming to town, Auburn has a bunch of film on how Ole Miss rushed for over 300 yards. And they have Tank Bigsby, and they have Jarquez Hunter, and they play a pro version of the spread. I think that Arkansas, this is the game of the year for Arkansas. Nobody will say that. Just because of the emotional capital that was spent last week in Oxford. I can't imagine what it was like to try and get those kids back up. This was an emotional gut punch. And now you're going up and you have to play Auburn, who last year beat you because the SEC officials didn't realize that if you throw the ball backwards, it becomes a backwards pass and a fumble. So Auburn's not much. They don't have much, but they do have a decent running game. Arkansas needs to be up for this game. They need to bounce back from this game because if they are still playing Ole Miss in their mind, they are going to be in trouble. But it's a game that they probably should win. Should win fairly easily. Auburn's not great. Their only win was a comeback win against LSU, and we've all seen what LSU is. So it's one of those things you need to be careful about. Now, that's pretty much going to wrap us up for the day. We have a couple of minutes left. I'm very, very thankful that you joined us and we had fun. And tonight, Epcot night for me, for my pass holder life. And probably going to do the steakhouse in the Around the World Canada area. I've heard good things about that. So that should be interesting. Yeah, that is my concern right there, Guy. Guy says if Arkansas loses, they may not win another game. Yeah, I'm worried this is one of those games that can beat them over and over and over again. It's one of those season ruiner type games. So I'm worried about that. But they're the better team. On paper, Arkansas should win the game. So tonight, going to Epcot, going to do the Canadian Steakhouse and Around the World. Tomorrow, I'm going to sit back and enjoy a bunch of football. At 9 o'clock in the morning, we are doing a Twitter Spaces chat. I've done this the past 2 games, and it's kind of been a little bit of fun. So I'm going to do a Twitter Spaces chat tomorrow morning as well. And eventually we're going to get other people on there to participate in the chat. But as it stands, it'll be my last second thoughts that comes out. We'll find out if Kion Evans is playing. Kyler says he's not playing. There's a report online that says he's not playing, but the coach and the player says he is. Of course, the coach and the player said they would. They would always say he is because they're not going to give an injury away on Thursday. So, who knows? But thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back next week I think Sunday with our review show that's actually doing quite well. That's pretty cool. And next week, we'll get back into it with another person agreeing to echo on there. So you'll see us in the SEC After Dark and Biscuits and SEC's preview on the Believe in Kentucky channel. Yeah, so we've expanded that greatly. So thank you very much for tuning in. Of course, we will see you then, and hope everybody has a great weekend. And of course, hotty toddy.